So far in this chapter, we've only been working in the primary storyline, which is this dark gray area of the timeline here. And this is where we've been building the foundation for the program. Now, we're going to add supplementary material to that foundation. So in this movie, we're going to explore how to do that by adding connected clips. So I'm going to go into my 3.5 keyword collection and load my Connect Begin project. And these are the interviews that we've edited and finessed in the previous movies. And we've edited up to this red marker, and you can see that I've added quite a bit more. If you'd like to practice doing this yourself, you certainly can. You can just continue from where we left off and use the interviews to flesh out the rest of the narrative. For the sake of timeliness, though, I've gone ahead and done this using only the techniques that we've learned so far, mostly append and insert edits, along with plenty of extractions and ripple trims to remove the extraneous bits. At any rate, our interview subjects are giving us a lot of great information. But we don't want to see them on screen the whole time. Rather, we want to see the things that they're talking about. Not to mention, the extra visual material will come in great when we need to cover up the jump cuts that happened as a result of removing the unwanted material from the interviews. So our supplemental visual material, or B-roll, is going to serve a dual purpose for us. So I'm going to zoom in at the beginning here, Command++. And we know that we're sort of setting up the military here as Mike begins talking. So what I think I'd like to do is actually continue these shots over this first part all the way up to this edit. So it'll help introduce the program and it will help cover up this jump cut. So what I need to do is find the shot that I want to add, and I'm going to come down to this one right here. And I'm going to mark an in and an out. So I'll just press I to mark an in and O to mark an out. And instead of using any of the editing tools that we've already explored, insert, append, overwrite, or replace, we're going to perform a different type of edit called a connect to storyline edit. Now, there are a couple ways that you can do this. The first way is to simply drag and drop. So I can take this section, drag it down, and drop it right above the primary storyline. And then you can continue to drag and drop your clips like this. But personally, I don't like to rely on this method because you can inadvertently leave small gaps and it's sometimes not as precise as you often need to be. So let me undo that, Command-Z, and we'll head back to keyboard commands. The Connect to Storyline edit corresponds to this interface button right here, or the Q key on the keyboard. So this time, I'm going to put my playhead where I want this edit to go, and I'll just press Q. And now we've used the keyboard to perform our Connect to Storyline edit. Let me zoom in here, Command+, because I want to show you exactly what happened. You can see there is a little anchor or connection point at the beginning of this clip. It is literally connected to this clip. So if I move it, you can see that the connected clip moves with it. If I move this to an adjacent clip, you can see that it's now connected to that clip. If I should delete the clip on the primary storyline, then you can see that the connected clip also deletes. Let me undo that, Command-Z. So bottom line, be careful and be aware of what you're doing and where your clips are connected. For now, I'm going to move this over about here, and I'm going to ripple trim this back so it's not quite as long. Now I want another military shot to go from the end of this shot to this edit right here. So instead of setting an in and an out point in my browser, I'm going to do it in my timeline. So I'm just going to press I to mark an in, and it automatically marked an out at the end of the clip, which is what I want. And I want part of this clip, I think right when the helicopter is coming through the frame. I mark an in with I. Notice that it does mark an out at the end of the clip by default, but I'm actually not going to be using it. It's just going to front time this edit. We have an in and an out in the timeline. We have an in the source, and I'll press Q. And according to this little orange bar here, you can see that it front timed this much of the clip. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play over this as Mike is talking to see if this is what we'd like.
So in the United States right now, there's a little over 37,000 not-for-profit organizations dedicated to military causes. And
so I think that works well, except I don't really want to see him right here. The first time I want to see Mike is down here. So what I'm going to do is actually extend this clip over to meet this one. And in order to do that easily, I want to lift these clips up and have them on the same level as these connected clips. So I'm just going to select them and then right-click and choose Lift from Storyline or Option Command Up Arrow. And up they go. You can see that now they're anchored to a gap clip. And I'm just going to ripple trim this over. And now I have a little montage to begin my sequence. Of course, we'll probably start with a little music here and then fade it down as Mike begins talking. All right, I'm going to do a few more. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I've placed a marker at the next place that I want to add some B-roll. So this is when Joe is talking about helping the veterans find jobs. Let's go ahead and give it a listen so that we know what visual material will go best here.
There are so many veterans out there. If you took each veteran individually, we're going to help you get a job. We've got your resume ready. Good. Now let's move on to the next one, to the next one. We have thousands of veterans. That process doesn't scale.
So I have some shots here of resumes and people talking to veterans. Let's go ahead and set this up. And I want to show you how you can actually add more than one connected clip at a time. So let's see. I'm going to come up in the browser here and mark an in and an out. If you ever want to check the duration, again, that's a Control-D, and you can see that this is 2 seconds and 11 frames. I think that'll work out fine. And then, let's see, we want to come to just a shot of a resume as he's talking about the resume. In, out. And then here we have people helping people. I'll do another in and out. And then finally this one, maybe she's working on her resume. So let's go ahead and just select all of those. I'm going to click and then command click and then command click and command click. And I've set in and out ranges on all of those. So now I can just come to this part where I want to add those connected clips and press Q. And they're all added at once. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Out there, if you took each veteran individually, we're going to help you get a job. We've got your resume ready. Good. Now let's move on to the next one, to the next one. We have thousands of veterans. That process doesn't scale.
So let's zoom in a little bit. We're going to need to finesse the timing a bit. I think when he says when we move on to the next one, that's where we want to see the next shot. So let's find that moment.
Ready, good. Now let's move on.
About right there. So I'll just ripple trim that back. And then we'll move this clip over and I'll play.
Let's move on to the next one, to the next.
And about right there is where we want our final clip to play. You can see that it's fairly easy to move these around, but I do want to mention one thing, which I'll expand upon in Chapter 5. As you're working with connected clips, be aware of their behavior. They don't behave the same as clips on your primary storyline. For example, if you try to ripple trim them out beyond the boundary of the adjacent clip, notice what happens. This clip gets sent up a level. The connection points must remain attached to these places on the primary storyline. Now, there are definitely workarounds for that, which we'll explore again in Chapter 5, but just be aware of that for now. I also want to talk about the notion of back-timing a connect-to-storyline edit. Let's come to this point right here, and I'll play over this so that we can hear what Joe's saying.
Process doesn't scale. What scales is when you get people at the top of the organization that said, this is what we're going to do.
What Project Realo is.
So what I want to do is end on something that describes this notion. And up here, I have this shot that I think could work. We have these business people shaking hands, sitting down, and then as this guy is gesturing with his pen right there, I think that could go well with what Joe is saying. So I'm going to mark an out point at that location. And what I want to do is back time that. So I'm going to mark an in and an out in the timeline from here to the end of the clip. And now I have 3 marks that I care about. I have my in and out in the timeline, and then I have my out point here in my browser, and I want it to back time. So I do that with Shift-Q. And you can see my little orange line, it back times from the out point. And I think this is going to work out well.
Is when you get people at the top of the organization that said, this is what we're going to do.
What Project Realo.
Not bad. Now there's one more thing I want to show you when working with B-roll, and that's that you can copy clips from one sequence and paste them as connected clips in another. I have a section down here, and I'm going to play over it for you.
The natural environment of our military veterans. They are in their element, and they have natural leadership that they just exude in this element.
Most of the people that are going to be...
So let's say that I was working in another sequence, and I have a series of shots that I think could work out really well here. Well, instead of recreating the wheel, let's go ahead and borrow that. I'm going to go into this montage, and I think I want to borrow this series of shots right here where we have people demonstrating leadership. So I'm just going to grab these shots, press Command-C, head back over to my main sequence, And notice if I just pressed Command V, they go into the primary storyline, not what I want. Instead, I'm going to come up to Edit and Paste as Connected Clips. That's Option V. So I'll just come to this point, press Option V, and I very quickly borrowed those shots from one sequence to another. So you can continue going on in this way, adding your connected clips. I've gone ahead and done this in the Connect End sequence. So you can take a look at this and draw some influence from it if you like. But as you do, just be aware of how the connection points come into play with the clips in the primary storyline. Again, we will explore this dynamic in more detail as we continue through the course, particularly in Chapter 5, which is completely dedicated to the behavior of connected clips and the workarounds and workflows associated with it.